So in this video, we're going to show you how you can do this too. Hey guys, welcome to the Hickorycroft bathroom. Bet you never thought you were going to hear that one, right? Today we are starting our fodder for our rabbits. And yes, we should have started this months ago, but in typical Hickorycroft fashion, we're behind schedule. So we're going to take you guys along for the ride as we do this step by step, day by day, and show you all the things you're going to need to potentially do a system similar to ours. So a few of the main things you're going to need for this are jars or something to start your sprouting, a rack to do your sprouting on. This is just a simple rack from Canadian Tire. We actually had to buy 2 racks in order to get enough shelves, and we just combined them together. So it's about a $200 investment for that, but we've now been using it for a couple of years and it's still holding up great. And yes, it's sitting in our bathtub. But what we're going to do first is measure out some of our whole wheat. That's what we're sprouting here. We've always done whole wheat for the rabbits. We've tried other things, but that seems to be what they like best, and that's what we're able to grow best. So if it's not broke, don't change it. So let's get some wheat into these jars and we'll talk about what you need for that. So step 1, on day 1, we're going to put 1 cup of whole wheat into 3 jars. Let's see if I can do this without spilling. So there you have your 1 cup of wheat. And what we like to use are the sprouting lids. You can buy these we got it at Lee Valley, but you can also get them at Home Hardware, Canadian Tire. They come in a pack of 2. They're wonderful. I think they're about $15 Canadian. Put that on.
For a set of 2.
For a set of 2, yeah, $15 Canadian. But if you don't want to spend that, I'm going to show you a cheaper alternative. So before we splurged on those fancy sprouting lids, all we did was we bought these, let me pop it out here, plastic. They were a sheet that you'd get at a craft store for doing, like, I guess it's cross stitch or whatever. They're plastic. And we would just put it into the ring and screw it on top. And same principle, away you go. You can strain those without any problem. But I will tell you one reason why those other lids are worth it. It rusts. And over time, you do have to replace those lids, and it does get harder and harder to do it. So if you're thinking about doing this long term, or try it this way first, but in the long run, you're going to want those sprouting lids. So once you've got your lid on, you're going to fill this with water. You want to be able to still kind of swirl it around without making a mess. And then you're going to drain it. Rinsing your wheat is important to prevent mold. Some people do put bleach in there. We've never had a problem with that, but we are very lucky to get quite clean wheat. You're going to see when I dump this out. Yes, there's some chaff that comes out with that water, but for the most part, it's pretty clean for wheat. And now we just put it on the shelf and rinse and repeat. And voila! It's that easy. Day 1 is done. All right, so we're on to day 2 of this fodder making project. First thing you're going to do is take the day 1's jars, drain them. It's going to be kind of a murky yellowish color because stuff is seeped out of that wheat. And then you're going to rinse it. Make sure you rinse. Fill that jar again, pour it out and rinse. The nice thing about these lids is you can just leave it upside down in the sink for a minute or so. They drain really nicely and back on the shelf they go. Only they move to the second day slot, and we're going to show you that in a sec. Then we grab a jar from the next day, color-coded lids, so they're going to all be blue lids, and we're going to do the same thing we did yesterday. So one thing to note here is look at the expansion on that wheat in one soaking day. And that's why you end up with so much fodder.
And that's one of the big benefits to doing this is you're taking a specific volume of wheat, and by germinating it, and as you'll see as we go through this process, you're creating more biomass, which is creating more food. And so I think that's definitely benefit number 1 to bothering with this process.
All right, so we are on to day 3 of moving these grains around, and we're starting up here with day 2 that you saw us, well, it was the original day 1, now it's day 2. It's going to be day 3 in a moment. We're going to get these filled up, rinsed, and then we're going to swap out the lids so that the green lids are freed up for our next day. So now that we've got day 2 moved over to day 3, we're going to take this one, drain it, rinse it, and it's going to go into where day 2 was. So now that we have those all rinsed and sitting for their next day, it's time to fill those empty jars to start over at day 1.
So there we are at the end of day 1, day 2, and day 3. And this is sort of the end of the days that the seeds stay in the jars. So tomorrow we're on to something a little different.
All right, we are on to day 4 of this setup. You can see the sprouts behind me, and day 3s have got quite the root mat on them already. So it's time to transfer them to trays. We'll go with that. For each jar, you need to have a Rubbermaid bin. So you need 3 for the top row. We've put them with 1/8 of an inch holes in them so that we can drain the liquid. That will be explained a little bit later in the video when we demonstrate that. And at this point, first row, you need 3 of these. We're going to empty all those jars into this and rinse them. Rather than going step by step on this part, because you might be running out to buy some of these Rubbermaid things, in the end, we used 18 for this. We have 6 days of 3 for the sprouting. Now, you may find in your climate it grows a little bit quicker than that, and you don't need that extra day, but here in Canada, in the middle of winter, we need it because it's cold, even in the house. So we have that, and I have one extra one that I don't have holes in, which will catch the water, which will be demonstrated. So we've been doing this for quite a few years now, so you're going to get a whole bunch of insider tips at this point, and you're going to need a knife. So you can see as I stick my hand in there, I can ruck it up. We're pretty good. If you let that go a couple more hours though, it wouldn't be so easy. We're going to fill the jar with water because lubrication makes it all come out easier. Take your knife, just go around the outside, just loosening it as you go. Like that. And voila. And of course you have to rinse these a few times, so that's a great opportunity to get the rest of those wheat seeds out of the jar. You will notice that some of them didn't sprout. It's okay, it'll still get contained in the root mat, and whatever livestock you're feeding to this will enjoy it just the same. So as I pour that last bit on, I'm just using my fingers to kind of ruck it around. You want to be gentle because you don't want to break those roots that are developing, but try and get it as evenly distributed in there as possible. And if I lift this up quick, you'll see it's draining out the bottom. And this is where that catch basin comes in real handy. So we've got a catch basin without the holes. I'm just going to put that on top of it to transfer it to the rack so we don't make a mess on the floor. Okay. And we put it into position and it will drain down. So you're probably wondering, why did she put it in the middle of the rack? There is a reason for that, and it will be very apparent as we continue with this video. But we always start third rack down because as it grows more into the grass, we move it to the top because you can see here we have grow lights on top. We started doing that just to encourage extra growth. It's not required. The wheat will still produce wheatgrass without it. But with these lights, we find we get 6 to 8 inch wheatgrass instead of shorter wheatgrass. So we have 2 more jars to do this process with. Then we have day 2s to become day 3s and day 1s to become day 2s. And we start all over again. All right, so we are on to day 5 of this fodder system. And basically day 5 is a repeat of steps 1 through 4. So here we are moving this one down because the new ones need to go above it. And then on it goes, and you'll see that drips right down and waters the one underneath it. So it kind of works as a system. The one thing I will say as a note here on day 5 is you don't have to put extra water into the system today, but come day 6, those ones that are moving down the rack will need to be watered because there's not enough water dripping out of this top one to water in succession 3 or 4 times.
We'll show you that tomorrow.
Yep, stay tuned.
You can see here on these trays, which are the 5th day in the system, there's actually already a bit of green growth coming. It's very small, but it is there. And that's what you want to see.
All right, so day 6, pretty much a continuation of day 5 and day 4 and every day before that. But look at the growth we have on day 5's, well, I guess it's actually day 1. It's kind of confusing, I know. But look at the growth on that first one that we started already. It is rocking. And we still have 3 more days of growing to go on that. So I think it's going to be pretty good. The only thing we have to do really that's different is move them down one more shelf. So you've probably noticed as we've been doing this, there's a few extra jars on the side. What we have here, human use bean sprouts. These are mung beans that we grow in the garden here, and they are a staple around here. But another thing we've started doing is sprouting black mung beans with lentils for the chickens. And we don't take them much beyond this point. You just want little tails because that's how the chickens like them. All right, so we are definitely to the boring part of this video because it is rinse and repeat again, literally. So day 7 is a repeat of day 6, only we're bumping everything down one more level. So you're going to see here 4 levels on the rack. We're going to do that, and then we're going to come back for a quick chat before we move on to tomorrow and talk about watering at this point, because at this point you're going to find you need to add moisture. So we're now to that point with 4 layers for that water to drain through. You're not getting enough just by letting it trickle down from that top rinse. So we take a watering can, nice long spout so that we can get into it under the racks, and we're going to water those bottom 3 layers. We avoid that one that we just put on because those kernels are all loose. Are they kernels? Berries? The wheat berries are all loose, so we don't want to muck them all around because we want it to form that nice mat. But anything below that has already got a mat, so pouring this water on is just going to saturate that, and it's going to just drip down again to that layer below. So this just kind of adds a bit of extra moisture when you're starting to see it dry out. And what you're going to start to see is it really even pools up in that second box or container, so you know you're getting enough saturation. All right, so we're on to day 8 and we're getting to the exciting stuff. We're moving from the bottom to the second from the top shelf, and we're going to talk a little bit about the changes we're going to make, and I'm also going to show you a big, well, not huge, but a little bit of a screw up we made. So from this point on, day 8 and day 9, we do not water it because you don't want the excess moisture, and the reason for that I'm going to show you here in this one. We'll zoom in for a closer view. We have some mold developing. We need this to start drying out. We let it get a little bit too wet. You're just going to have to adjust that yourselves as you notice how your system flows and runs and drains, because drainage is very important. The other thing that's happening is our light is on. Now, we're not leaving it on in the day. This is purely for demonstration. But at nighttime, we leave that light on so that we get that extra bit of growth. As I said in the beginning, not required, but it is very much an asset. So we have 1 day left, and you can see there we've got about 1 inch or so sticking out of the top. So when we come back tomorrow, we'll see how much growth we got in that day. Otherwise, and this takes me back to a song that goes something along the lines of second verse, same as the first, but a whole lot louder, etc. That's where we're at. Day 8, we're going to take that jar, we're going to put it into the day 1 slot, or I guess it's actually day 4, and move it all down, and the process stays the same. But you can see in this jar, we have a bit of an issue that has arisen. So in our previous days, this, when you went in and stuck your hand out, came out quite easily, was still moist, and fell apart. Well, we are running behind schedule today. It's actually the morning rather than the evening, and we didn't do this last night. So we have extra growth in this jar, which means we almost have to tear that root system apart in order to get it out of the jar. Now, we find it usually doesn't do a whole lot of damage to the actual growth, but it does make it a little bit more difficult to get it out of the jar. Well, today's the last day, day 9, and we are moving them up. All right, so this was our final move up for the whole rack system, day 9. We've got another layer that we're going to be putting into this slot here. So we will be repeating the same process every day from now until it gets too warm to make fodder. So now that you've seen all the steps, this is day 9, morning. We're about to cut up this fodder to take it out to the rabbits, and we will be sure to splice in a piece of footage here to show you just how much they enjoy this stuff, because this is the good stuff in their books. And what we started with was our cup of grain here in our water soaking. Now, what we didn't talk about at the beginning, which we thought as we went through this process we would wrap up at the end, was just how much was in this cup. So I dumped the cup into my 1 cup measuring cup just to see. It overflowed it. So I measured it again in my half cup. It turns out this is 1.5 cups or 9.7 ounces of wheat. So this will allow us to calculate out how much it costs to grow this system. So basically, 1.5 cups goes into each of these jars, and in the end, you're left with this, which amounted to 36 ounces or 2 pound 2 ounces of fodder food. So that is a almost triple increase, probably more than triple actually. I didn't calculate that all out. You can do that yourselves, but basically for a 3/4 pound of wheat, you are getting 2.2 pounds of fodder, which is a pretty good conversion and makes it very affordable. We will go into some of that cost analysis stuff later in a separate video, but for now, we just wanted to talk you through the system here and how we ended up with the product that we got.